B.D.A arc for most is one of those arcs that you go back to, and every time you read it, you see something either new or something that you've seen before, but the feeling is the same. The nostalgia is overwhelming, and it reminds you of why you got into One Piece. It's almost like a breath of fresh air every time rereading that arc. With One Piece being a character-driven show, this arc gave us some amazing characters, which to this day still affect the story. Some people forget that Mihawk was introduced at the B.D.A arc. This is not a Mihawk versus Zoro video, but I would be remiss not to even mention this. This moment had a lasting impact on Zoro and the story overall. Due to Zoro losing to Mihawk here at the B.D.A, it created a sense of conviction. You believed everything Zoro was saying, and the fact that he wasn't doing it for only himself but also for Luffy, it deepened the bond between the two. And due to this, you wanted more people to join the crew. You wanted to see how far they would go for Luffy. Would they have the same dedication as Zoro? With Sanji and his wavering, would he ever eclipse Zoro in terms of loyalty? And of course, with Mihawk being Zoro's end goal, it had even more weight to it. It just fits so perfectly. And in an arc that was supposed to be Sanji's, I mean, it is the arc in which he's introduced. However, it did not overshadow the events of the B.D.A. It was a quick tangent, but I just had to mention the greatness of this moment. We can't forget about Zeph's impact on the story and of course, Sanji. But today, the character I'm choosing to highlight is not a character that's even been mentioned in almost 800 chapters. This character has only been in a small percentage of the series, but when you come across a great character, you know it. Jin is introduced as a random character who comes into the B.D.A restaurant and demands food as a paying customer. Of course, in the B.D.A there are strong chefs, and Patty, being the strong chef that he is, tells him flat out that he's not getting fed if he doesn't have any money. What's also great about Jin's introduction is the underlying themes going on around Jin's introduction. Of course, someone coming in and demanding food, even putting a gun to your head, is a bad thing, so you should not give him any time of day. However, this man is at his wit's end and about to die. You don't even have scraps you can give him. Luffy comments on how strong Patty is. However, he sees what Patty does to Jin, and there's an ellipsis showing that Luffy's thinking about helping and stepping in. However, he doesn't. I suppose this furthers the narrative that Luffy is indeed not a hero, because this is a situation in which somebody needed help. They did a bad thing, but they needed help, and Luffy did not intervene. Going back to underlying themes and knowing what we know now about Sanji, this was the moment that laid the foundation for what we know of Sanji as a character now. Jin was kicked out of the restaurant, and Sanji, being someone that would not want to see someone starve, especially starve to death, brought food to Jin knowing that he could possibly be an enemy. It's important to point out this distinction that Luffy saw Patty in combat and said that he was strong. He didn't see Sanji in combat yet, but after seeing what Sanji did for Jin, said that he had found a cook for his crew. This further proves another underlying theme, that Luffy selects his crewmates based on their character and not necessarily strength, which we've seen time and time again. The characterization is so beautiful here because it shows the difference between Sanji and Patty in a beautiful way. Patty values paying customers over anything, no matter the type of person they are, which drives who he is as a character. Sanji values actual character, who you are, over if you're a paying customer or not. It really doesn't matter to Sanji, but if you're a dick, then you incur his wrath. But even still, even if you're a pirate and an underling of Don Krieg, Sanji will still make sure that you eat and would not deny you food. Upon introduction, I thought that Patty would be the one to join the crew because of how strong he was. Then after seeing Sanji and his character, it was obvious. That's the man for Luffy's crew. What made Jin great is upon introduction, they said it took 7 of them to take an injured man down. Then we saw him at his worst when Patty threw him out of the restaurant because he couldn't afford to pay for food. Then we saw how remorseful and thankful he was after Sanji gave him food. I think as a fan and a viewer, seeing these different emotions in a character provides a deeper level of connection to a character, because you can see yourself reacting in almost the same ways in these situations. Jin was there and was privy to the conversation between Sanji and Luffy, and even offered advice saying not to go to the Grand Line. It's a dangerous seas you should not traverse. We saw that there was some care there for Sanji. Of course, it's based on Sanji saving him and becoming a savior, and we see later down that Jin actually did the bow that Sanji did for Zeph, thanking him for saving his life. The thing is, Jin was multi-layered. There were different parts and things to him which built up this his character. Through being at his wit's end, being thrown out, and now being saved, Jin still showed undying loyalty to Don Krieg. Jin, through blind loyalty and seeing everything Sanji did for him, of course saw that they were good men on the seas, and of course tried to help his captain, who in essence backstabbed Jin because he did not care about Jin's ideals and things he believed in. He was still Don Krieg. This showed that Jin was actually a good person, because at first glance it seemed like Jin was taking advantage of Sanji's ideals and what he stood for, and was going to backstab him anyway. But we saw his true nature with Don Krieg. And as the saying goes, better men follow greater men. What's interesting about Jin is that Oda not only used him as a way to flesh out different characters, he used him to communicate different things that he wanted known in the narrative. Not only to drum up the danger of the Grand Line, but to also introduce a certain swordsman into the arc, to bring Zoro into the fold. Mihawk. Jin also chronicles everything that the Don Krieg fleet went through, and this is coming off the heels of him apologizing to Sanji for everything Don Krieg had done. Don Krieg and Jin's relationship is also important here because I believe it's strategically placed to show you just the type of person Jin is. Jin was willing to take out a crewmate to take out Sanji by his own hands because Sanji was his savior, and of course Don Krieg highlighted that he hated nothing more than honor and compassion, so Jin was following a man like Don Krieg, but they did not share the same ideals in the slightest. Because of the scum that Don Krieg was, that made Jin's character shine even more. He was a ruthless pirate, yes, but he was compassionate, honorable, and kind when need be. But as a commander to a pirate captain, one thing you should always embody is loyalty, and that is what Jin did. What even added to Jin's character is the underrated fight between him and Sanji, in which he bested Sanji for a bit, and Sanji of course used a cigarette to gain the advantage, but Jin still managed to get a hit in. Jin was a formidable fighter. It's interesting because as much as Jin was built up in this arc, you would expect for him to join the Straw Hats. However, Jin is too much like Zoro to become part of the Straw Hats. What I mean is, even down to his epithet, in which he was viewed as a demon, however, we know the true person, we know what he stands for, and that was just the perception of him. What capped off Jin's amazing character is that the characterization that they gave for Jin as far as what he was perceived to be and what he had shown throughout the entire arc, the layered character that he was, at the end, it showed that he was really a compassionate man who had, again, honor as a pirate. He could not kill Sanji because Sanji showed him more kindness than anyone had ever shown him in his life. Tears in One Piece, especially from a man that was perceived to be a demon, resonate a bit more with the audience, and I think that's exactly what Jin did, especially again counterbalanced by Don Krieg and his actions. His presumed first mate was the direct opposite of what he represented, or at least his character was. Jin also exemplified an intense level of accountability. He understood that by helping Sanji he broke Don Krieg's rules, and therefore whatever may come to him he was ready to accept it. And even through the midst of accountability there was sacrifice. The bevy of redeeming qualities continued. This man in one moment showed loyalty, empathy, and remorse, which again adds to the list of redeeming qualities that Jin possesses. Sacrificing himself for Luffy was almost Straw Hat-like. Jin was a character who, if he had joined the Straw Hats, would not have been a surprise. He was that great of a character. He showed every level of anything another Straw Hat had showed. The only thing we never received from Jin is an in-depth backstory, something that would explain his qualities. The reason why he chose to follow a man he did not agree with idealistically, like Don Krieg. The reason why he was that powerful. After Don Krieg's defeat, there are signs that implied that he followed Don Krieg because he was powerful. He was the only man he had admired. One would think he would follow Luffy at that point. Luffy had beaten the man he deemed to be the most powerful. But again, redeeming qualities, one of loyalty, he decides to save the man that tried to kill him with poison. Jin also said that his loyalty was not real. He had been using Don Krieg as a shield, but of course that was being modest. He cared about Don Krieg. He admired Don Krieg. And of course he may have been using Don as a shield to hide his own insecurities, but Jin himself was extremely powerful. There are several theories as to why he should live and should be alive, because through it all he was a character who was inspired by Luffy as well. The dynamic between Jin and Sanji was one to behold. He also helped to convince Sanji to leave the B.D.A. and to join the Straw Hats. Great characters don't need much time. We saw Jin for a few chapters, but in those chapters made a lasting impact on the story. To this day, people wonder when Jin will return, due to not only the dynamic with him and Sanji, but how Luffy inspired him, and we expect him to be much stronger and better when we see him in the future. I suppose only time will tell. But guys, give me your thoughts. How do you feel about Jin? Do you think he was a great character? Should he be alive? or based on his impact and how it resonated, he should probably stay dead. Again, it was never confirmed that he died, but it was implied that he was going to die on that day. But again, leave your thoughts below. Like the video if you did. Be sure to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. We're stronger. We're going to settle the score in this video. For people that don't know, it's been a 3-part series with Admirals, Yonkos, and now Yonkos versus Admirals. If you haven't watched the first 2, you can go watch the first 2, then just watch this video, then go watch the first 2. They're just my overview on the Admirals and my overview on the Yonko, and now we're pitting them against each other to determine who is stronger. Now I know that